Are you guys drinking cider?
I am.
Oh, let me go get mine.
Okay.
I
Well,
am.
which one should I have? You got the Comeback Kid.
Yep.
My niece told me that
Hazy
hazy hopped is the gateway drug for beer drinkers.
Yes.
You like the
hazy?
Comeback Kid?
The Comeback Kid.
Okay.
Yep.
See, I like
What
the
is-
hazy hop.
What does that one taste like? I think I'm going to get all of them.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just like it.
I tend to like my ciders a little sweet. So I found that the hazy hop was the one that's closest to what I normally drink. I
Okay.
drink ciders a lot.
Okay.
I drink ciders more than anything else.
Yeah.
My family got to them before I did.
So you didn't get to try them all.
No, I did.
Okay.
But I didn't get to drink a whole one of all of them.
I'm drinking mine tonight. So, and this is the last one I have.
Well,
Okay.
then I better open it.
You don't
I've been
know.
saving mine for this.
You don't know how
Me
hard
too.
it
I hid
was
mine.
for
I had to
me.
hide mine.
This one
Oh dear.
was in danger. I took it up. I looked at it last night and I said, sure.
Good
So,
job.
I'm drinking this tonight.
Yes,
Okay?
you
Go ahead.
Pop it
Okay.
open and drank it. So the backstory is
Yeah.
these guys went to Ireland on a honeymoon. Their honeymoon. Her husband is gluten-free, so he drank cider in Ireland, and apparently they're drier. They're not as sweet as the ones we have over here.
Hmm.
And they've just fell in love. And he was looking for a career change, and he did a ton of research and got the funding, and now they own a cidery in Alexandria, Virginia.
Your goodness.
Yeah, and
Wish them the best of luck on their venture.
okay, so which one should I try? I'm opening 3. So
I would say I like the hazy.
I like
that's just-
I love the Comeback Kid.
okay, I'm gonna try hazy and Comeback Kid. What are you drinking, Carmen?
I've got the Comeback Kid.
Okay, I'm gonna try that. I like
it's
it.
very beer-like.
I like it.
Antoinette likes beer.
Yeah.
What can I say? I like what I like. Mm.
I'm gonna try the hazy hopped.
Okay. That's the one with the raspberry?
No.
Oh, doesn't have a raspberries on the front of it?
That's good too. That is sweeter. That's more like a traditional cider. You guys have no idea what a lightweight I am. After this third one, I might not be able to find
Oh,
Well, you haven't
no,
had anything for.
I forgot. I had lasagna in the oven.
Wingman has the raspberries. You drank all that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I sure did.
What's your family's favorite, Catherine?
All of them. They were gone. I don't even think they read the names. They just drank them.
Okay. All right. These are my 2 favorite.
Yeah.
Happy.
All right.
All right.
Sanja.
Here we go. I am
All
Courtney
right.
Williams. I produce the blog Outlander Behind the Scenes. I love the Outlander, the show, the books. I find it fertile ground for personal growth, healing, and rich discussions, which is what we're here to do tonight with some of my favorite people. And we are talking about episode 508, Famous Last Words. And we are drinking Lost Boy cider.
It's
Cheers.
really good. Oh my God.
I am Catherine, or Kathy. I'm a family physician who enjoys the books and the show individually. I'm not a purist by any stretch of the imagination. The most that I've gotten out of Outlander is not even the show or the books. It's actually all the interactions with other fans, including my sisters here. So this has actually been the best part of it. And I am drinking the hazy hopped Lost Boy cider. It's very good.
I'm Antoinette. In real life, I'm a public defender, and I am drinking Comeback Kid Lost Boy cider. It is great. I love Outlander, and I love, like Kathy, the interaction with fans is something that that has brought a new and wonderful dimension to my life because of Outlander.
My name is Carmen, and I write the Outlander Anatomy blog. I'm a fan of the books and the show. I do enjoy greatly my interaction with these ladies and the other fans on the various different social media. I have a great deal of respect for the author of all of these stories and her fertile mind that has put into motion this amazing phenomenon, which I love dearly in all of its forms. And I am drinking Lost Boy cider, Comeback Kid, just like Antoinette.
Slanger.
Yes, Slanger.
I'm going to give my overall impression as usual, and then we'll go into our order. Actually, okay. So the first time I watched this episode, it was on Easter Sunday. I'd had a great day. And quite honestly, I just felt like depressed after I watched it. I felt a little stunned. And so that's probably because I've experienced PTSD myself, maybe. I don't know. Several reasons, I think, but I think it was skillfully done. There was great acting. Stephen Wolfenden was brilliant again. Mm-hmm. It just left me. I thought it was super intense, and it left me
drained.
And the idea that I needed to go back and watch it to prepare for this, I was like, ugh. I told Catherine, I think it was, or maybe all of you, I'm dreading it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how I felt.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was one of the few episodes where I watched it twice back to back, and then as soon as and that was at midnight, went to bed, woke up, watched it again. I can't remember the last time I've done that with an Outlander episode. Mainly because I felt that it was done so intelligently that unless you paid close attention, there were so many subtleties that were missed that I liked the scavenger hunt of it. And so I just enjoyed it because it was so different. It was done with so much silence that it just felt like we were being given a gift, and I received it.
I watched it at midnight, and at the end of it, I didn't like the episode at all. But then I said, you know what? I am sort of in a dark place, and maybe it's those sensibilities that are coloring how I'm seeing the episode. And so I watched it again the following day, still felt the same way. And I watched it a third time yesterday because I knew we were going to talk about it. And I just wanted to gauge how my reaction had changed. And the only thing I can say is that I felt like the episode took me on a train ride. The scenery was wonderful. I enjoyed the company. But at the end of the ride, I was left feeling as if I'd gone nowhere. I was left feeling empty, wanting more. And so that's the only thing I can say. I have no beef with the concept and how it was done and how it was put. Nothing like that. It was good TV. But I just felt like I went on a train ride to nowhere.
Mm-hmm. I would give this as a 4-star. rating out of 5, maybe 4.5 in certain parts. I felt like this author, who is Danielle Barrow. Have we seen any of her work before? I don't. I was going to say, I think this is a first for her. I was impressed by the amount of territory that she deftly condensed into 55 minutes or so of actual story time. This covers a large segment of the book. And I when I first watched it, it was Saturday evening, and I came away not feeling, not feeling one way or the other. But then I've watched it 3 times since then, and every time I like it better. I think it's a very, very good portrayal of the PTSD, as the new term for it, the battle fatigue, or whatever term Claire used for it. I think it's a very good portrayal of that. But I think the story has even more to say than just Roger's experience. And we'll get into that as we go through it. I do have to say, I think it's very difficult to follow the last one that we had. And, what an act to follow that was. I mean, that was darn near perfection. So I think it would be tough to do that, but I think it held up pretty well.
Okay. What were your favorite scenes, Catherine? And why?
My favorite scenes were the black and white flashbacks. All of them. The initial one wasn't exactly my favorite of all of those, like that silent movie way of doing it. As soon as I started watching it, the first thing that popped into my head was Birth of a Nation. For anyone who doesn't know, it's a Klan movie. And so when you see, black and white, that same silent movie style with men hanging from trees, it was like I had that same visceral reaction. The silence was used in such a way that every single time it showed up, that was my favorite, because I liked just to see how they were going to use it. It was the art of it. It was so artistic. At that point, I didn't really care as much about the story. I was just like, how are they doing this? Why are they doing this? Oh, cool. Right. They're doing it again. With Rick's acting along with it, there was just no one scene I could just pluck out. It was every single time that came up, and then what followed and what preceded it.
I hear what you say, Kathy, about the artistic aspects of it, and I can see why that would appeal to certain people. But I don't necessarily watch Outlander for that. I watch Outlander for the story, for the interaction with the characters. And so my favorite scenes were the scene with Jocasta and Jamie at the beginning, where we got to see a little bit of both of them trying to process their grief over Murtagh. I thought that was very well done. Not too long, but it didn't feel truncated. I also like the scene with Marcelly and Ian when they were sitting on that stoop. I continue to find Lauren Lyle just a wonder. And I'm just very, very much in love with her portrayal of Marcelly. I also like the scene at the very end with Roger and Bree when he came back and was finally able to talk, because that sort of gave me an insight onto what they've been trying to portray about Roger's journey. And it redeemed the character a little bit for me, because up until that point, I just didn't care. He had annoyed the hell out of me. And I just wanted it. I wouldn't have minded if he never spoke again. So I was, because y'all know that I was tentatively on the Roger train in 507 because I love the scenes with Murta and I was really rooting for him. And I said, yes, I can get behind it. And then he's here just lamoning through this entire episode. And I just wanted to say, Roger, shit, man. Grow a pair. You survived. You have your wife and your kids. Shut up or don't talk. So I really like that ending scene because it showed me a lot of what they had been trying to convey before. And I got it. And so I tentatively put my foot back on the Roger train, just one foot though.
My favorite scene was also the Jocasta and Jamie scene. I thought that was so tender and wonderful. Even their nonverbal exchanges, especially when she sees his grief and she gets that look on her face and reaches out to him, and then she. Oh, the line that she says.
Oh, God, yes.
How careful we'd be if we can't, which goodbyes would be our last.
Yeah. That was my favorite line.
And her delivery of it in that moment, and then the effect on Jamie. And then you see that he goes to comfort her and she allows herself to be comforted for just a moment. And then she gets her tough Jocasta. And even as Ulysses is leading her away and you see him concerned for looking at her face, really like, oh wow, she never looks like that. I'm concerned. That's what I saw. My second one was Claire, Jemmy, and Jamie playing hide and seek.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I thought and I don't even know if it's Claire, Katrina with that child was so adorable. And he loved her so much that I just really enjoyed watching that. And again, I found the whole episode so heavy, and that those moments, I was like, oh, there's a joyful child. And I love that. And I cracked up because, when he goes to find Granda, he pretty much hightails it. As soon as he sees him, he's like, ugh, back to her. And then my third favorite scene is when they were doing laundry by the river.
What?
Yeah, just one of those. Well, they were doing laundry. It was like a ridge scene where they start the music and it just kind of sets the tone, and it's the women doing laundry by the river and making candles again. I love those scenes.
I find those annoying.
I love them.
Oh, really? I like those too.
I love them because they give context and they give, it's something besides just the characters. I don't know.
It's a little breather from all the Sturm and Drang.
Yeah, it's a breath. It's a punctuation or something,
I gotcha.
Yeah. So those were my three favorites.
Well, mine's going to be sort of a mixture of what you ladies said. I very much like the scene between Jamie and Jocasta. I thought it was very poignant and very telling for them to be able to share their mutual love of a man who was not his real father and not her husband, but they still loved him as without those traditional bonds. They loved him as much as he could be loved, I think. So I really enjoyed that scene deeply. I also, Courtney, really liked the hide and go seek. I just thought that was just so joyous. And what a cute little kid. I gotta tell you.
Oh my God.
But Jamie, here's this huge man hiding behind the tree, being found, and him playing like, oh, I got caught. I just thought that was just charming beyond belief. I thought it was delightful. There is a scene that I liked very much. It was heavy. but I liked and nobody's mentioned it, I very much liked the scene between Roger and Ian as Ian was preparing to depart this earth.
Mm.
It's not very often that we see two men in a role where they're both so raw like that and seeking their place in the world, which I thought the astrolabe was a metaphor for, you know, because they have been displaced by their experiences. And I think so is Bree. But I do think that women have a resilience that is sometimes harder to find in men.
Yes.
And you know, I don't mean to be sexist by that statement. And
but it's true.
I don't know if it's childbearing. I don't know if it's because we start bleeding from our bodies early in life, well before men get, you know, a taste of what it's like to be mortal. But I just think that for them to be that open with each other, you know, one struggling to speak his words and the other one not able to, you know, having been in a culture where you didn't speak your words, for them to try to communicate with each other in that setting, I thought was, I was just very touched by it. I thought it was a good scene, and I like to see men be vulnerable with each other like that. It's not always, you know, hey, big guy, and let's just punch each other, you know, and go on our way. But it was actually a very raw expression of their struggles and how they were each approaching it. And each one had something to say about the other one, you know, and what they observed in the other one that might be helpful to them. So those were my scenes.
That scene when Roger and Ian first saw one another, there was just a subtle nod from Ian, and then a subtle nod back from Roger, and then they hugged, and then Roger was struggling trying to say something to him. That I thought was probably one of the most powerful scenes because it was just so underdone. That was a less is more type scene, and I thought that was great.
I'm going to tack on one more thing. And when my husband saw that, he said, he had forgotten. He said, are they brothers? Because there was such, you know, a deep connection that they were expressing so well. And so I reminded him, and then he remembered what had happened. But, you know, he's not a book reader, so book memorizer.
The other was when Jocasta was singing. You know, it was just so much coming at me, like because I was thinking in terms of, you know, historically, you know, lynching and then the black and white and the birth of a nation. So I was already a bit raw and all of that. But then when hearing her voice, every time I hear her sing, I always think Billie Holiday. And it's so interesting because I thought that before I found out that Billie Holiday was her idol. She has this way of
quality.
Her quality to her voice is so emotional.
Soulful.
It's very soulful.
It's soulful for a white lady.
Wait, it is, and that's you know what's interesting because once I actually
just saying.
No, you're right. I actually wrote and it's funny because I wrote something on Twitter when I first heard her sing, and actually that there's a sound to suffering, and it comes through, and I think that soulfulness is not just, it's universal, but it comes from a place of pain. Not even so much for the individual, but when singing in a language or singing about an experience that is collectively painful.
There's some people who are able to feel other people's pain and portray that. You know, Billie Holiday was one of those singers that was like a sponge. She could soak up that pain and put it into her music. Nina Simone is another one like that comes to mind. You know, they're not just singing, you know, they're sharing themselves with you. So I
Mhm.
think Maria has that quality.
I did a piece on Maria right when she got cast. She said that, acting is a job, but she needs to sing. That's why they're doing their Friday night singing from the kitchen table. I don't know if you guys have watched those.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're
Mhm.
amazing. And to
They
me,
really are.
what she does is she channels. That's what she
Mhm.
does.
Yeah.
Even just sitting in their kitchen, it's herself and her husband. And I thought, how cool that she shares her passion with her soulmate, because
Mhm.
they're
That
very
is.
he's very much her Jamie. So we're on what worked, Catherine.
Well, what worked for me, which I felt was it was a gamble. I think it was intelligently done. And I think that I could see why people didn't like it very much, but I really, really liked the silent movie thing. And I liked how they progressed it from black and white silent movie to silence black and white to muted colors to muffled sound and then to full color. I thought it was just a stroke of genius. I thought that it was a huge risk that for me paid off. I can understand why other people didn't feel like it paid off very much. But then I've actually watched silent movies before, like a whole movie of silent movie. It was one of those things where we weren't being spoon fed. I felt that it was, it's like we complained before about people being intellectually lazy, the production being intellectually lazy. This was absolutely not. This was the absolute opposite of that. It was like, we're going to try and do something different. We're going to try and give you something different, and we're going to make you think. To me, it was like saying, okay, we're going to a museum. I'm going to show you art, and then you look at a Picasso, and either you love it or you don't. It wasn't typical, but it was still art.
I got you.
I would agree with that.
The other thing that worked for me, thing, Rick's acting. Oh my gosh. It's interesting because even though I've had similar experiences, it didn't pull up those watching him, but it did pull up patience of mine that I've tried to get to and I just couldn't. And I could hear that frustration in Claire's voice, actually. Another time where they've really, really tapped in very accurately to how physicians feel when they're somewhat frustrated because they know there's nothing they can really quite do. But you know that it's just frustration, but frustration with compassion, I guess is the best way of putting it. And you could hear it and you could see it. And I thought that worked for me. There was just so much. I really liked this episode. I mean, it was just, I liked it because it was so subtle that you had to either draw from yourself to fill in the blanks or not. And I guess I had enough to fill in the blanks for me. And so I just loved it.
Okay.
Antoinette?
The silent movie, that effect or that they did, I really liked it the first 3 times, because when it first came, I said, oh, this is different. Wow. I said, this is different. I like this. They're taking risks. They're trying to elevate this thing to some kind of high art. And I said, yeah, I was into it. But then I wasn't after a while. So it worked for me in the beginning. What else worked for me? I thought the dynamic that they managed to create between Ian and Richard, that is a very interesting relationship. And I really liked it. I didn't like how they got there in terms of, why Ian was there with him at that time. But I think those two together is another relationship that I am going to be interested to see that grow and develop. So I really liked their interaction and that other partnership. Another thing I liked was, as I've been saying from the beginning, that the cinematography has just been spectacular. I love how they photographed Richard up close and drawing back, and then from the side, it's like you were seeing into his soul, but then he would cut you off, you know? So I really loved how they used the cinematography to try and show what he was going through.
I'm right with you, Antoinette. I thought when I first saw the black and white and the silent, because they do it as a title card, which then just goes into the episode. I thought, oh, what's this? What? Because I saw Diana Gabaldon's name, and I was like, what? I think I even maybe rewound it, and then when it went on into the show, I thought it was a really creative, effective technique, and I feel the same way. It just too many. Like, I think we watched Roger get hanged like 25 times or something.
I made a note.
Did you count?
Yes, I counted.
Uh-huh.
It was 11 times.
11 times. I would have thought it was at least 24. I'm serious.
Yeah, it felt that way, didn't it?
It
I was
really
going to say 8.
Well, did you count like all of the times they showed it, like quick times too?
Yeah.
Okay.
I counted all of those. What
Okay.
I didn't count was the one where it turned to color.
Okay. Well, that counts.
That
Yeah,
counts.
well,
And last episode, so that's 13.
yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, because you're right.
So
The trailer.
and we're talking about what works.
Like
So
15 then.
Okay,
it's
so
not
what
in the
works?
right
What works?
category, but I thought that was a great technique. It's kind of like the voiceover. For me, they overdid it. And by the end, I was like, I feel I'm being forced to watch Roger be hanged. And I, over and over again, and I don't want to do that. Okay, so I also thought Richard did a phenomenal job of acting. I believed, that's part of why I didn't like it. I believed him. I thought he played every scene so well. I'm glad they buried Murtaugh at the Ridge with his family. That worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
I thought John Bell did a really great job of portraying Ian caught between two worlds, and in grief.
I want to reiterate what Kathy said, that one of my favorite things about it was the black and white, the silent film approach, because I saw it as a metaphor for the Roger's brain obsessing on the trauma that he had been through. And little things, you remember when he picks up his carrying bag and he feels the burlap on it, those sorts of things do trigger people who have battled PTSD or something similar to it. Just driving down the road and seeing a car on the side, sometimes at the side of the road, sometimes can trigger it in people who've been over in battle zones where cars are used to blow up, to explode people and so forth. And I thought it was a great way to enable us to see into Roger's mind. Nobody can see into anybody else's mind. We don't have the ability to do that, even though I think people sometimes think they can, but we don't really have the ability to do that. And I think this was a device which enabled us to see what was happening to this man inside himself and what he was struggling with. And it isn't like, the reason why I think the many repetitions was actually reasonable and believable is because that is the way that people relive this type of thing. It isn't a 1 or 2 times thing and then you're on your way and you don't have to deal with it anymore. Little things trigger it over and over and over again. And he was very close to dying. that was a really close call on that particular one. And so I think that it was a very clever device to let us see into his mind and experience what he, from his perspective, even seeing through the burlap, as if we were looking through his eyes at his feet hanging. Could you imagine if you saw your body hanging from a rope like that? Well, that would just be, you talk about facing your mortality. I just thought it was actually pretty brilliant. I enjoyed seeing Jo wearing her Luckenbroth Booth pin on the ribbon that Murtagh gave her as her farewell token. I probably mispronounced that, but Luckenbooth, I think it's the way that I heard it pronounced online. When she's singing her song, she has that around her neck in remembrance of him. There were so many things that I liked about this episode. One other thing that hasn't been touched on that I thought was really very tender was when Jamie found Ian out on the landing, sleeping on a blanket, and, you know, he tries to interject himself, and, you know, Ian's holding him at, you know, at arm's length, and he's always just, you know, tagged in Jamie's footsteps all the way. And instead of Jamie rejecting him or getting frustrated with him or angry, he said, would it be all right if I just sit here for a while? And Ian said, I would like that very much. And I just thought that was just lovely, because we so rarely get to see men interacting at that level.
Yes,
and I just loved it. We see it in women all the time. They don't have, in my experience.
And that look that passed between the two of them,
yes,
was very poignant.
Yes.
That was one of my favorites too.
Well, just the look of longing on Ian's face when he said that, like,
would you please? That would
I
be
think
okay.
he said, I didn't mind, or something like that.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah.
But
I mean, but then
said, please stay.
Yeah.
But if anyone understands PTSD, depression, feeling lost, it's Jamie.
It's Jamie.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that's so lovely about Jamie is he doesn't know what's going on with Ian, but
he doesn't know the story.
He knows how to gentle his way in, kind of like with a horse or something, you know, like, that's one of the things we love about him. I wanted to go back to something you guys brought up about, or Carmen, you brought up about men being less resilient. I think
that's probably not a fair statement, but it came off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think I've wondered about that. And I think that part of what goes on with modern men is I find they are less likely to be a member of a tribe. An acceptable guy tribe that they actually get, a multi-age tribe that gives them what women we seek as part of who we are. You know, and they had that set up in their cultures in the past, but now it's kind of like you're with a woman, and if the guy tribe thing happens, it's either through sports or work,
gaming,
and I just think that's a real thing that's missing for men, and it gets so vilified, like, oh, group of men, that's bad news, you know. They've excluded women, or women have to be allowed in. And I just feel this is something that I've paid attention to for my son's whole life, and he's 17, of how this happens. How do I cultivate this for him? Because I think that's part of being a healthy man.
That's right.
And
human being.
And being able to have those relationships with men, with vulnerability and sharing those things. And we don't see that in this culture as being valuable. I think that for all men, there's this sort of this idea that any type of aggression is negative, neurotic, and you see when it's channeled correctly, it's an okay, it's healthy for them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in terms of sports, or like doing something like the haka in with the New Zealand or Hawaiians, they actually do those things at funerals, at weddings. It's it's accepted, a communally accepted form of expression of part of who a male is. I feel like our culture is really
within that
devoid.
culture.
Yes,
but you also have to understand that was also almost wiped out because it was not accepted by who they were colonized when they were colonized. So a lot of that, what you're seeing, is a resurgence because of people going back and grabbing back into their cultures. But a lot of that was almost destroyed.
Saying, Courtney, there's not a lot of safe space for men.
Communal.
Safe spaces for them to come together to express that part of them that would have been satisfied by, say, back in the 1700s with going on a raid against them, whatever. There is nothing in this modern society that allows for that. And it is actually frowned on, because then people talk about herd mentality and how men get together, and then the whole toxic masculinity, and men egg each other on to bad behavior and that kind of thing. So it's frowned on.
Well, I think that's where like the things like the Boy Scouts come in. I think that one of the things I don't agree with is when there's something that is unisex, it should stay that way. I mean, I went to an all-girls school. I loved it.
Me
too. And it's allowed to stay that way if it's girls, but if it's boys,
but even that's my point. And like my brother's school was all boys, and then they started letting girls in, and I felt that I didn't go. I thought it diminished their experience.
Yes,
and I think that is a problem. I think that all male environments are not bad, and they should be allowed.
Well, they should be healthfully cultivated so that the whole point, going back to the beginning of my point, is Carmen saying you never see those kinds of exchanges between guys.
I wouldn't say never, but it's pretty rare.
Well, you rarely see, because now you just see a guy following his wife around at the mall, because that's his connection to everything is the wife.
Yeah. However, at that time, it was not unusual because you did have communal,
not back then.
But unfortunately, they don't express that as much.
Back to 508.
Yes. Is there any much more to talk about what worked, or should we go to least favorite scenes?
We can go to least favorite.
Go for it.
My least favorite was the opening scene with Roger when he was lecturing. Didn't see the point. I was like, okay, we could have gotten that bury the hatchet part. We could have gotten famous last words in 1/10 of that amount of time.
I agree.
I felt that it was awkward. The only part about that I liked is that they showed him speaking in one way as a professor, and then then later as he's speaking on the ridge, you could tell the changes in his accent from being an Oxford Don to being
Ridge Roger.
A ridge dweller.
Ridge Roger.
Ridge Roger. Here, that was one of the rare times where I was watching it thinking, did that happen in the book? I rarely think about the book when I'm watching the show, but I did then. And I was like, where in the timeline would that have happened? I felt like the students, all of that, it was like, okay, if you're going to put in this bury the hatchet thing, then at least explain it, because he always explains things ad nauseum any other time. So why did he not this time? I could have done without that scene completely.
It was a long scene too.
It was a long scene.
It took quite a bit of time.
3 minutes and 42 seconds.
That was
that
one
all?
of those. That was one of those.
Antoinette, you didn't have any least favorite scenes, did you?
Oh God! Let me get out my notebook. I can't read it because it's too dark in here. But I'm with Kathy. That opening scene was ridiculous. It was too long. I didn't see the point of it. I kind of see what they were trying to get at, but I mean, totally unnecessary. 3 minutes and 42 seconds that felt like 10 minutes. And I just
Did.
didn't see the point of it. I did not like the fact that Lord John Gray just popped up to say 2 lines again. And why did they take that astrolabe moment from Jamie and give it to Lord John Gray? Is Lord John now supposed to be Bree's substitute father? What about the father that she had that wonderful reunion with in season 4? It's like they're total strangers now. And Lord John is filling in the gap. I know they love David Berry. He seems to be a very cool dude. And I loved him in season 3, in Ardsmuir and at Hellwater. But they just seem to keep him hanging around in season 5 to pop up with these 1 or 2 lines. And it's annoying the hell out of me. My other least favorite scene or storyline or whatever you want to call it is Ian trying to kill himself. Ian would not come home to the rich, see his aunt and his uncle and Marcelly and his family, and then not say anything to them, and then go off and try and kill himself. Ian, suicide, raised as a Catholic with that mother of his? Fuck no. So that was not a favorite scene.
I didn't buy that either.
I agree with you on that one.
Whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So no. And lastly, I do not. That scene with Roger and Bree. It's not even a scene, it's just a concept where Bree is having to tell this man, listen, I understand trauma. I've been raped. I fought to come back. And because I had a son, and he's just sitting there looking at her like, I'm in my feelings. I was almost hanged. My world is silence now. And I wanted to say, bitch.
Well, Antoinette, I actually wrote on here, like, Antoinette, are you okay with how Bree talked to Roger when he has just been traumatized, when you were upset about how Roger was talking to Bree?
I mean, maybe I'm not being fair to who the writer who conceptualized this whole thing, because I have been through trauma, and people respond and experience their reaction to trauma and PTSD in different ways. I've been at that point where I've had a gun cocked and put to my temple. I have been there. I have been stabbed. I have been there. So when people talk about, oh, your life flashes before your eyes, that didn't happen for me. I was just paralyzed, could not move, couldn't speak. My whole body just froze. I understand what they were doing in showing us his stuff and his PTSD and showing us the window into his mind. I get it. He's living in silence. His world is now this black and white image in his mind because he has been through his trauma. But after seeing his trauma 9 times, I just wanted to say to him, you escaped with your life. You are not injured, except that you might speak differently or you can't sing. And for me, I just didn't buy those scenes where he's experiencing that level of trauma about the loss of his voice.
But it was realistic, though.
It was on Twitter, I heard people say that it resonated with them because that is how they responded in their.
I mean, I've seen it and treated it. It's just that was very, 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 very well done. It was very accurate.
I'm sorry. As I said, it's coming from my personal experience, and I understand that everybody responds differently. But I just felt that we were bludgeoned over the head with Roger and the hanging, and then to hear that physically he could speak, but he was choosing not to. And then Bree having to relate her trauma to him to try and stop him out of his pitifulness over the loss of his freaking voice.
Oh,
I forget. Where were we?
I had to
What
go
are we
get
on
some
now?
more. I got some more cider.
All right. So
Good girl.
Just a comment about that. My thing wasn't like, Roger, get over it. It was more, I had a high-speed horseback riding accident when I was 8,
Mm-hmm.
and I almost died or was paralyzed. I don't know. I mean, I was very lucky. And working through that, I had a lot of PTSD. It would be when I'd be around horses. I just get these it was almost like, I can't even really put into words what it was, but I felt like I just didn't want to go through any more of it after a while because I identified with it, having been through that. And I would get it also like in a car at speed. It would just be this crashing over and over again. So I was just like, why am I watching this? This is very evocative, and it wasn't like the Wentworth ones, 115 and 116, but in a way it was. I didn't want to watch it again. It's too much. So that was it wasn't Roger, get over it. It was like, I don't want to watch this anymore, because it did feel realistic for me. So my least favorite scenes, believe it or not, is probably Jocasta singing, because I felt like I was watching Maria singing, and I didn't see Jocasta standing there singing. I saw Maria singing. So I was like, it felt like it just, as much as I love Maria, it felt like we completely, like they said, oh, let's have Jocasta sing because Maria is a great singer. And so it just wasn't in character for me at all. I didn't feel like it was.
What is that term you like to? It pulled you out of the story?
Yeah, it pulled me right out of the story. And I was like, oh, it's Maria singing right away. And then watching her, I thought she looked really young in this episode.
She did. Did you notice that too?
Yeah. And so
like
that made
lost
it
weight or something,
and that made it even like less believable that she was Jocasta, because she just looked like Maria in a wig to me singing. So that didn't work for me. And Roger teaching was my other least favorite scene.
Yeah.
I was distracted by his hair.
Me too. You too. Yes. So was I.
I think I'm kind of confused about his hair, because they're using a wig, obviously, because you see it in his hairline, but then he has long hair. So I'm not sure
what happened.
I don't know what's going on there, but they had it tucked up in the back to try to make it look
weird.
short, but it looked like a strange
hat,
thing.
A hair hat.
Yeah. Oh God. You're not going to believe this one, but I liked the scene with Marcelly, but I'm kind of a little bit curious and a little bit like, what are they doing? Where she's always the kind of reverse psychology, tricky advisor, and you know what I mean? Like she did it with Bree, and then she did it with young Ian, and I'm kind of like, what are they doing there?
And the tarot cards.
Oh, forget about
it. There was just something, I don't know. I was like, Marcelly's awesome, but she's awesome as Marcelly. I don't know what you're doing with this. With her, and I'm not sure about that. So those were mine. Carmen?
Finally. We'll shut up. We promise. My lip is all zipped.
Well, I was confused about the Oxford Dawn scene, because I've been trying to get it to fit into to wrap the title, Famous Last Words, in with what actually happens in the episode. And it's only just marginally fit to me. I also was like, now when did Bree go over there and sit in his classroom? That was an invention that doesn't happen in the books, which is fine. They can do that. But I just didn't I don't know, I didn't really see the purpose of that scene. I'm always sort of looking for reasonable reasons for why people behave the way that they do.
Mhm.
And that is probably foolish to always think that there's reasons. But I just didn't see that added to the story significantly. Did you see that Myrta's cairn moved?
Yes. Oh, well,
So
actually,
in the first scene,
was that
it's like a half a
perspective?
mile away. And then right
Aw.
after Joe Casta's carriage moves down the lane, it's about, 200 feet from the house. And I'm like, what? That Myrta, he's a powerful
shifty
guy, but I
He's
didn't know.
Not that powerful.
See, I thought that was just perspective from
No, I don't think
angle.
so. Go back
Oh.
and look at it. It's
I'm being generous, I guess.
I don't think it can be chalked up to camera perspective, but I could be wrong about that. I'm sure we'll hear from Stephen an explanation. We may hear from him an explanation of that. I thought that the paper thing was an interesting idea, her making a paper airplane.
Mhm.
But, paper was so scarce on the ridge. You remember Jamie even wrote in the margins of pages. He didn't waste one space. And there she has a huge blank piece of paper that she folds into an airplane. It just was not realistic, I felt. I understand what she was saying, that a marriage starts out like paper and over time it melds into a diamond if you're lucky and you are able to stick together. But I wasn't real charmed with that. And I also thought it was a little odd, because I'm always looking at the practical stuff.
Mhm.
I thought it was a little odd that Joe Costa was up there in her carriage. It's 200 miles from Fayetteville to the ridge one way. That's at least a 10-day trip, or 8 to 10-day trip. And, it's not like they just are over the hill, so I thought for Ulysses to be in his livery, and them going off like that, it didn't seem very realistic to me. It's far more, where they're living is far more civilized and developed than I think it would have been in the back country at that time. Yeah.
Let me just say one thing, picking up from Carmen. That's something that I've noticed in season 5, even though I've loved much of season 5. There is a carelessness with some of these little details that I find very annoying. As I said, we're in season 5 now. Those kinds of things should not still be happening. They need to pay more attention to that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think I agree, and they distract me. Maybe they shouldn't, but I do find them distracting because they are not reasonable. They're not logical. And one of the things that I love so much about Diana's writing is that her stories are infinitely logical. They're very creative. They're historical, and because they have all of these elements, that's why everybody has such a hard time categorizing them, because they're so excellent in so many different aspects. So those are some of the little things. I've got another one, but we're going to do medical. I'll save it for medical.
Can I just say one other thing for this thing that bothered me? Their rotating cast of characters. It was like they just kept plopping people in. Lord John Grey, Marcelly, Fergus, who finally got a line this time. Lizzie. It's like they just plop the children. Germain. It's like instead of just letting it just smoothly go through, they kept like throwing people in, just like, okay, we've got to pay them, so we need to use them.
But where were Kessie and Joe?
Yeah,
they've been gone for a while.
They're out hunting.
I feel that way with Lord John Grey. The rest of them live on the ridge, so I can popping up. But he's supposed to be, where is his estate? Somewhere in what, Virginia?
Virginia.
Wherever.
Well, he
Mount
was
Josiah.
there for Tryon's to pass on Tryon's message.
You know,
Well, in the book, he
force to the
sends the astrolabe by mail.
Yeah.
Well,
So
actually,
that's more
isn't it
realistic.
William that
I know.
sends it
Yeah.
William,
at his
Well, he
father's
asked him-
request.
William buys
he
it,
asked him.
Buys it and sends it at his father's request.
Yeah,
Don't-
to Jamie, not
Yes,
to
to
Bree.
Jamie. Don't make
Yes.
me get started on that again.
Yeah, I thought that was weird. Okay, and then Antoinette, anything else that didn't work for you?
Lots, but I think I've said enough.
Did you guys see Roger kissing Bree in that first scene? It
Yeah.
was like his mouth didn't move.
No, there was no chemistry between the two of them.
Chemistry between them.
No, she's very rigid. When he comes at her, it's like she's her head's
freezes.
back. She's like she's putting her mouth forward, but her trying to keep her head back. It's like the weirdest thing.
Well,
There-
if you
I
look
just-
at his lips, he doesn't like go forward with them. It's like, eh.
I mean, I remember the chemistry is
I
not
mean,
there.
their kisses, their everything about their physical interaction.
It was
But they started
just
off
that
good.
scene. It was just that scene for me. The
For
rest
me,
of them were
their
okay.
their chemistry's been off.
No,
Their chemistry was
fine.
there. It's like they
Yeah.
fell out or something, and their chemistry's been off.
I think,
But Jamie and Claire have been great this season, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
I thought they did a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
But
were
I
all my
still say
favorite
there's
scenes.
more. Bree has more chemistry with other characters than her husband.
Yeah.
She has more chemistry with Lord John.
Oh yeah.
I think
I
people
was like,
would actually
whoa.
like to see that.
Mm.
yeah.
Anything to get more Lord John.
Screen.
Let's do things I noticed. Things you noticed, Catherine. Anything
Things
else?
I noticed. Okay, couple things I noticed.
Any walls?
Definitely. Oh yeah. No, that's last. Everybody expects my walls, but the things I noticed was the chemistry between Lord John Grey and Bree when she was on the porch. I was like, is he about to kiss her? I'm like, and he's like, it was like he just kind of moved. He moved up to her, and then he was giving her this look. If you look, he was looking at her neck. He wasn't looking at her mouth or trying to see what she was saying. He was staring at her neck like, And it was almost as if you read the books, you know why.
Yes.
But at the same, I'm just like, whoa. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll give him the benefit of the doubt because, after all, he is Willie's father and Willie is her brother. And I was like, no, that was not a look from a father to a daughter at all. The other thing I noticed was the subtlety in Rick's acting, the little head nods, the little, swallows, the little, I just thought that was, those things I noticed quite a bit. And of course, I did notice that the walls in the kitchen bedroom that Ian was supposed to sleep in looking very much like the walls that were in Marcelly and Ferguson's house in Wilmington.
Mm-hmm.
But those walls in Jamie and Claire's bedroom, did you see the color? Oh my gosh. That bluish, it was like I don't even know the name of the color, but it was like this aqua, like a deep turquoise, almost like like if you took turquoise and mixed it with burnt ochre, you'd get that color. That's what it looked like. It was just beautiful. It's what they do. They take the walls, they glaze them, but so when they have a light shining on it, if it's daytime, it looks one way. If it's night, it's another. And if it's night with the candle, it looks a different way. And it's just beautiful. But the sets are all beautiful. I mean, the sets are just. Hey, yeah, I've even coined a phrase. I'm a steel magnolia after John Gary Steele.
What does that mean?
After John Gary Steele.
Magnolia.
I've created a fan group for John
Yes.
Gary Steele.
The
We're
Steel Magnolias. I love it. Have you told him?
You're a groupie,
I don't know.
Kathy.
I put it on Twitter. I don't know if you've seen it or not.
You're a groupie.
I love it.
Oh
I love
man,
it.
he's just. I mean, I figure he's safe, so I don't. I'm allowed to fangirl over what he does because it's about his talent.
Yeah. He's pretty
okay.
hot too.
Yeah.
but he's also very married.
He
And
could get it.
to a man.
I'm sorry. You forget it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I figured Steel Magnolia was better than Wallflower. So I just said Steel Magnolia.
I like that.
I agree. Antoinette, anything you noticed?
Okay. I think what I noticed how palatial the house at Fraser's Ridges. Did you see that freaking chandelier? So I think they've just
Oh yeah.
whole Jamie and Claire are, always broke and trying to make ends meet, and the lair trying to figure out where they're going to get money from to buy the plowshare and this, that, and the third. Because obviously they are wealthy. Did you see I noticed the china?
Yes, the china chest.
Chandelier. I'm saying, what? They've certainly come up in the world. I don't know. I love John Gary and his work and everything, and I understand the reason for how the house is big and all of that, but it just doesn't sit well with me. It doesn't sit well with me. I think that's a departure from the story, that I didn't see the reason for it. Don't think it adds anything to it. They could have made.
I think that was intentional, though, and I don't think it was intentional because of set design. I think it was intentional. They wanted him to seem more like a laird.
Could be.
Jamie is a laird not because of his possessions. It's because of his ability to command men and to lead men. He's a leader of men, not because even when he didn't have anything.
Yeah.
In season 2, when he took the Lallybrook men, he was a leader of men. It's not just because of his possessions. So that doesn't sit well with me.
Lallybrook was more fancy than I thought it was going to be too. To be
exactly
honest.
so,
yeah.
exactly so. And I noticed. Well, it's not something I noticed. It's just something that when I saw it, I said, "Huh, Marsley and these tarot cards." I'm saying, okay, hold on a second. Where has this Marsley come from? How the hell does Marsley, who grew up in the Scottish Highlands in Balrigan, and who came across from Jamaica or wherever with Jamie and them, how long did she stay in Wilmington to where she's now reading tarot cards?
That's from Fergus. It's Fergus and his con games, I guess.
No. I know I didn't like that. That felt contrived, and
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And I don't understand why they needed to put it. Hang me. Fuck, we had been hanging 9 times by then.
Yeah, did you count the card as one? And 2 cards, so that's 15.
Twice. Thank 15. You.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where you felt like they were going back to just telling us the story instead of letting it unfold and letting us come to those conclusions. It felt like I was being hammered over the head with Richard and the hanging, and I wanted to say, I get it. He got hanged. And he sees himself that way now because every time he flashes back to his trauma, that is what he sees. I don't need to see it any freaking more. So I wondered about that. And where that came from. And the other thing I noticed is that these kids seem to be afraid of when they were when the kid was playing hide and seek. Mm-hmm. And Courtney, he ran, and as soon as Sam came out, he just hid. And it's weird because Sam and that little boy in season 3 that played young Willie were so great together. So maybe he's of a certain age, maybe he just looks too big and frightening for them. I don't know what it is, but that was hilarious. Because normally you would run to your granddad and he'd probably pick you up and whirl you around in it, as Jamie does in the books.
Yeah.
So I noticed that these kids just don't like Grandpa Jamie that. But for himself, he seems to get on with Germain, because remember in which episode is that? He knelt down and they were talking and he said, here's something, give it, and he ran out. That kid wasn't afraid of sun.
Well, I think it's just little babies and
little
toddlers.
ones.
And
our toddlers.
I saw something where Katrina was saying, yeah, any scenes with babies are not Sam's favorites. So the babies are probably picking up on that if he's like,
Could be.
so freaking do the scene, you know?
I don't interact with these babies. So I did notice that.
So in the transition to the campfire scene where Roger and young Ian have gone out to measure, survey, Roger and young Ian's horses are tied up.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept going back. There was this weird thing. I was like, what is on the Beardsley's horse? it looked like there was something on his back, and I kept watching it over and over again. Those horses are actually grooming each other. You know how horses do that, where they chew on each other's spot? That's what they're doing. That other horse's face is there, and they're going like this, and so they're moving, and I thought it was kind of. I wondered if it was, Catherine, you called it a happy accident, you know, because it was kind of a symbolic or metaphor for Roger and Ian being out there soothing each other and grooming each other. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I also noticed that as they came riding back, Richard had his feet out of his stirrups so that he could sit the trot. And he is a dressage rider. So a lot of times saddles, different Western saddles for sure, I don't know about the saddles they use, will put your stirrups forward, and English riders ride with their feet straight down underneath them. So he was sitting his trot with no stirrups and then cantering with no stirrups, which was good.
I did notice that.
He sat his horse well too.
Yeah. Well, it would have been easier to do without the stirrups, the way he's been trained. So I'd noticed that. And I was impressed with John Bell cantering downhill, ponying another horse who's also cantering with a large bow sticking up. Like that could have ended really badly.
He didn't sit his horse quite as well as
no
Roger.
Richard rides. But let's see. And then I noticed more John Gary Steele trees. The tree that they're sitting under.
Yeah, it was a spectacular tree.
Yeah, with the paper airplane.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought the shot of him throwing the plane off the cliff was really cool. Do you think that was CGI?
Yeah.
But hold on, is that hold on, that cliff, is that the same cliff that Jamie and Claire were standing on in episode 501, where the fire car? It looked like the same cliff.
No, I didn't think so. I thought it was different.
You thought it was,
we never saw that side of it.
Yeah, we never saw it.
We're not looking at it from that perspective, so maybe.
No, because remember we did see it, because they came in, they had a wide shot
the trees
into them. So it looked very much like the same cliff, and I was saying, but hold on, aren't they supposed to be surveying the 5,000 acres that Tryon gave to Bree? Why the hell are they at that cliff if they've been surveying that land?
Yeah.
Well, then again, they stand there to look out over into the ridge. So that land may not be theirs. It's just where they look out over to their land.
I said, that's
because the ridge is the ridge, and the cliff is. Never mind. I'm sure there's someone out there who has a map that they've written out based on what's written told. But I'm not it. I'm not that person.
They had a map at the season 4 premiere. Remember that, Carmen? Of Fraser Ridge.
Yeah.
Yes, they did have it, but I don't remember that it showed any cliff nearby.
I didn't memorize it at all, but I don't know. Maybe Claire and Jamie have been standing on Roger's land.
That's possible.
I don't know.
to bury the hatchet, which Roger mentions in his early exchange with the students, and I couldn't figure out how that fit in, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But then we see Ian burying his hatchet.
Mm-hmm.
That actually originated, I looked it up, that originated with the Iroquois Confederacy and was a Mohawk tradition where they did, in fact, it means let's sue for peace, let's go for a postponement. And so I thought that was an interesting little bit of historical aspect that was put in there. Ian burying it, I think to me, what it probably meant was that he had come to peace with his decision that he was going to depart. I also thought it was an interesting balance that Murtaugh leaves and Ian returns. And it kind of reminds me of the old saying that one door closes and the other door opens. And I looked that up, and that was actually Alexander Graham Bell that came up with that, which I thought was really interesting. Wow. I didn't realize it was. But it felt like that to me, that there was a balance there, and that may be one of the reasons why they moved him forward in the compared to where he is in the book. I did find it a little odd, the scene about the boar, and for a couple of reasons. One is that I turned on the closed caption, because a lot of times I'll do that at least with one viewing of it, so I make sure I see everything that is being said. And it said that the animal was growling.
I heard a growl. I thought it was a bear.
It was growling.
Well, that's not what a boar does. They don't grunt.
It was grunting. It didn't sound like a growl.
It sounded like a growl. When I first heard it, I thought it was a bear.
I did too.
I thought it sounded
or a wolf,
the same
or a coyote or something like that. I thought it was more of a carnivore's sound. I guess pigs are actually
they're omnivores.
I thought it was the same as the Geordie.
In season 1.
Yeah, it made the same sound.
It didn't to me. When I heard it, when I listened the first time, I thought it was going to be, they moved the bear scene. I said, but wait, he's already bear killer. So I was like, yeah.
So I thought that was a little odd. And then there was something about the timing between when it was shot and Jamie had his dirk out, and ready to stab it, that didn't feel, it felt not quite, it didn't flow quite
a bit
realistic to me. I think perhaps because it was too short a distance between the rhododendron that he was in, or whatever it was, the laurel bush that he was in, and when he got to Jamie, that wasn't very far. And so I didn't think there was enough time for Jamie to really get his dirk out and get poised and ready to stab it, and then also Ian shooting it with the arrow.
Carmen, can I just say one thing that I just love about you?
What?
It's not just a bush. It's never just a bush. It's a rhododendron or a laurel or something. It can't just be a bush.
And then you're right. It's my brain. It's just the way it functions. I saw another interesting metaphor I felt in that when Roger wakes up in the morning and Ian's gone, and he takes a hold of the rope that is binding Rollo. I thought, that's a interest here. That dog has the rope around its neck, and he's bound, not to a tree limb, but to a wooden stake driven in the ground. And I just saw an interesting parallel there, maybe not a metaphor, but sort of a metaphor, a parallel between what Roger was coming out of and what he was seeing and what he had experienced. And then the last thing, and then I'll shut up, is did you see that Roger was riding that black Friesian cat? They're really getting their money's worth.
Yeah, that's why I said when he rode in on the Beardsley's horse.
But it's interesting.
That.
You mentioned that rope. and after all the times of everything he's touched that kind of took him back,
Yes.
you think that one would have done it. However, because he was more concerned about Ian, I guess his focus shifted.
Well, he
And so
also,
maybe
but
that's
also he's coming out of it. That's
he,
what.
Yeah.
he'd already had the color
Yeah, he saw his
Mhm.
wife's face on the
Vision.
cliff, at the cliff. Vision.
He's seen
Yes.
his life in living color at that point.
Mhm.
Mm.
And I do have something else I want to
Yes,
say.
go for it.
In defense of all of the 11 or however many,
15.
Flashbacks.
15.
Yeah.
no, it wasn't that much a minute ago.
No, in total, if you count the hangman cards.
Oh, okay. I think if we stick to the black and white until it finally becomes color, I think that each one of those showed a slightly different perspective in
It
his
did.
experience
Yes.
until finally at the end there's a fusion of all of those. And that's why I think I'm okay with what they
Yeah.
did in that
Yeah.
response.
It
Well,
didn't bother me
and
at all.
It was very artistic. It was very artistic.
I thought so, yeah.
But I also thought it was kind of weird that some of them were first person and some of them were third person.
Mhm.
That was a little
I suppose
confusing
they needed
for
to
me.
Yeah, I
They-
think, well, they were trying
they-
to explain
They
what
were
was happening.
explaining, but was it a flashback or were they explaining? You know what I mean? It was like,
Yeah.
They were
kind
trying
of-
to show us every possible angle of Roger's suffering.
yes. Okay. One point of discussion. What do you guys make of the scene with young Ian and Jamie where he says, I can't give you the truth of it now. I didn't have the words, but there are things you keep hidden from others, you and Claire both.
Mhm.
And
I thought that meant he was because he was where Ottertooth had been, and so I thought that while he was there, he was around people who felt they knew that Claire was a time traveler.
Okay.
Because she had Ottertooth stone.
Oh.
And I think that's what it was, either that because I was thinking Faith wouldn't have played into it, because that's more
But
book
he said
related.
it almost with resentment in his eyes, like, I can't tell you, and besides the fact you keep things hidden. And then Jamie looked abashed a little bit, and I was kind of like, what's this?
Well, it's true. I mean, he was asking him to reveal things that he wasn't ready to do yet, and his response was, well, now hang on just a minute, there are things that you don't talk about.
But he didn't say it like that. I paid attention.
Well, no, he just came from living 2 years with speaking a different language, Courtney.
Yeah, but his inflection was.
Yeah, I thought there's a level of hostility there.
Yeah,
there is. Yeah,
Yes.
that's true.
I couldn't tell if it was
right.
just
That's the
anger with
confusing
life,
part.
and so he's just projecting, or if it was because his perspective had changed in terms of what they had in the Ridge versus what, he's been living with the people whose lands are being stolen.
Yeah.
And so maybe his attitude was that, yes, this is nice, but he looked at the area differently. Or maybe I'm not based on the show rather than the book. I mean,
maybe
the book
he feels betrayed that Jamie and Claire never confided this in him.
Well, Ian has always suspected that there was something weird about Claire.
Right.
Yeah.
He's asked if she's a fairy.
Yeah,
she's a fairy woman.
The very first time he met her. And then when Bree came, he said, when it comes to Auntie Claire, I've learned to expect anything. He always suspected, and I think you're right, Kathy, he may have found out something while he was living with the Mohawk. But that is one of the things that felt off to me, because Jamie and Ian have always had such a close relationship. And in this episode, it seemed to me that Ian, there was some sort of bubbling resentment in the way that he was dealing with his family.
Yeah.
With Marcelly, with Claire, with Jamie even.
Okay, are we ready to go on to bigger themes? Because what I want to say is going to
tie into
Well,
do you want to do medical first?
Yeah.
Okay. There was a couple things. One, The PTSD was well written.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is about Outlander. They must have a PTSD expert because they get it down every single time. Yes, there were times when I just like, okay, get over yourself, Roger. I just felt like frustrated with him. Like, okay, you're just coming off as weak. But that's exactly what happens with people interacting with someone who's in a deep, deep depression with, or with, it's just like snap out of it. You just can't snap out of it. There's no way to snap out of it. It's a chemical change in your brain, and it's just not going to happen. And one of the things that even Jamie brought up, aren't there some wee beasties that you can, he was like, he's confusing medication with,
Germs.
infections. But and so actually I looked it up to see when medications were used. There were antidepressants at the time that Claire was practicing in the 1960s, but they weren't widely used. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't actually psychiatry. The DSM-4 wasn't even introduced until 1952. So she would have left not too long. I mean, probably wouldn't have caught on really well to a surgeon.
She might not. I was going to say she's a surgeon too. So,
exactly.
It's not like she would be using it.
I didn't realize that antidepressants weren't widely used until the 1980s.
Yeah.
I just had, because I guess going to med school in the 90s, during the time I've been in medicine, there've been a lot of new ones, but I didn't realize how uncommon they were. And psychology also wasn't widely used during the time that Claire and even Bree were in the present. So there wasn't a lot for them to pull from in order to help him. Other than their own experiences, like Claire's with war, and then Bree's with people coming back from Vietnam, which was very, very common.
Yeah.
They saw, just a lot of trauma. The two things, and I'm sure Carmen's going to talk a lot about this, was a tracheostomy and a subconjunctival hemorrhage that from his. I thought that was very realistic. They made the whites of his eyes go red. Yeah. Like they bled because of the pressure from being hanged, which I thought was very realistic. The only thing I did notice, though, the tracheostomy scar was a little bit on the high side.
Yes. It was. Compared to where she described it. Now, well, I'll let you finish because I have some things to
where
say
she
about
cut. That. Oh, but the one thing I thought was very interesting, Carmen, did you see this? They had subcutaneous fat come out of the incision. I was like, whoa, look at that.
Yeah, they did that with Geordie back in the Gathering in 104 too.
Yeah, but that was before good. You, so I didn't really notice those things before.
Yes, my job.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you have?
So first of all, I noticed the subconjunctival hemorrhage. The conjunctiva is a transparent membrane that overlies the white of the eye, the sclera of the eye, but it also reflects onto the inner surface of the eyelids. So it has a fold back around the back of the eye. That's why you can't ever lose your contact all the way back behind the eyeball unless it somehow cut its way through that membrane. Anyway, I liked that. I thought it was good. He did say in his Q&A on Instagram, I think it was, that he was wearing contact lenses, but he thinks that there may have been some CGI added to it because it almost looks like it's blooming in the color part of it, and I thought that was well done. He also has facial petechiae. If you look, especially along here on his cheeks, he's got these very tiny little red dots. That's from subcutaneous hemorrhage. And that's consistent with the strangling because that's what was killing him. It wasn't, he didn't get his neck snapped like a long drop. He was what's called a short drop hanging. The tracheotomy that she performed, I wished we could have seen where it was placed. It was done in such a tight quarter that I couldn't see the landmarks. I was looking for the laryngeal prominence, and to see whether they followed the book, because in the book, Diana describes it not as a thyroidotomy, which would be between thyroid and cricoid cartilages. Oops, I'm getting too technical. It was actually in the trachea itself. So it wasn't up in the larynx, it was down below. But one thing that Diana says in her description is she says that Claire pressed her knife through the fourth tracheal cartilage. She wouldn't do that. She would put it between the cartilages. She wouldn't go through the cartilage. But then she put something in there. I couldn't see what it was. And then she breaks off the pipe stem. That's Mr. Caldwell's English pipe. She poured imported English pipe. She poured alcohol on it and then used that to create the tracheostomy. And that would have been accurate. I had no problem with it. I thought that was well done. I would have liked to have seen the landmarks for where she chose to do the tracheotomy, though. Once you put in a tube, then it becomes an ostomy at the end of it. But when you're cutting into it, it's an otomy. I said Caldwell's, it's Caswell. Also, Roger had somebody on Twitter was a little concerned because they said his hand wasn't damaged like it was in the book, but I don't remember seeing his hand once they took him down. I don't think we ever saw it. No, he did break, in the book, he breaks 2 fingers. She has to splint his fingers, and his hands and face were so black and blue and swollen that she applies leeches to them, if you remember. So that was something that they didn't want to deal with, I guess. Then the other thing was that, and I had to laugh, kind of chuckle at this, that's a beautiful tongue depressor blade that Claire uses. I don't know if it's ivory or bone or what it is, but it's gorgeous. But she wouldn't be able to tell the kind of damage that he would have gotten with that thing.
She may have been able to see his vocal cords.
I don't think so.
But maybe. I mean, you can, because even when doing a intubation, you pull up on you can see the vocal cords if you push down the tongue enough. I mean, but that's usually it's the other direction, though.
Yeah, but not that way.
No.
Not with the hand and not with the face in the anatomical position.
She would have had to come up from the other direction.
That's right.
I think she knew at that point there was no damage. She just was it was sort of, it felt like one of those situations where you put your hands on someone as the healing hands rather than actually doing anything to before, rather than really treating. It's just a matter of just touching to help somebody to move them along in their healing.
Without spoilers, do you think that's going to work in the future books?
What?
That he has no damage, that it's all mental.
Yeah.
Well, I know they mentioned it in this episode already.
They did mention that, and then in the scenes from next week, his voice is normal almost.
Well, this is the thing. It was very interesting how his voice recovered. His voice recovered very quickly. From the minute he walked in to him hurting when he said stop. Yeah. To suddenly being able to talk and just kind of go from.
Well, that may be the end of that part of the story. They may not be dealing with it anymore. I don't know.
I hope so.
But that's a diversion from the later story, I guess I should say.
Definitely. My thing, how did Ian know that the water hemlock was poisonous, or is this something that people just knew?
Probably Native Americans used it for something.
Could be. I looked it up to see if it grows in North Carolina. It does. In fact, it's pretty widespread in parts of North America. And so he may have known it through the Iroquois, but or maybe he heard them talking about it. That wasn't really explained.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some things they explain ad nauseum, and then other things they just expect us to know.
Maybe they don't think we're watching. That's a big mistake.
Well, see, that's the thing. I think I've actually had people within the crew and cast just kind of surprised at the level of scrutiny.
Yeah, that's right.
I was part of a conversation on Twitter about the episode, not speaking specifically, but there were certain things, and it seemed to me that a lot of these creative people who are doing the show still don't really know this audience.
That could be because
they appreciate us as fans, but I don't think they understand.
But Antoinette, how could they? How could they?
By now you would think. Well, Kathy,
my thing is
by
this.
now you would think they'd have. I
know. I mean, but my thing is this: these are people with years. Some of them with years and years and years of experience who've never encountered anything like this. So they have a system in place. They have a way of doing things, and it's just suddenly they're like, well, they're being hit with this new medium. Honestly, with social media, with people being analytical, with people being, scrutinizing, and actually being quite critical in some ways, sometimes critically thinking and sometimes just being critical. You have a system in place that you probably aren't thinking relies heavily on what the fans think.
Yeah.
Or the fans want.
And even the marketing, even stars, like, I thought they weren't gonna do the Keziah Josiah reveal that they're twins because they said announcing Paul Gorman playing the twins. and then same thing with Jamie and the Redcoat. And then they show last week they did release a new trailer with Roger walking around, and it's like, guys, are you watching the show?
It's like almost like they don't realize there are people who are show watchers only. And not just who haven't read the book.
Is there any legal repercussions for Tryon wrongly hanging Roger?
No, martial law prevailed. They're in war.
Well, Jamie almost kills him in the book.
Yeah, I was waiting to see that.
That would be good. I would like to.
That would have been a great scene. The one thing I liked about is that they still kept the fact that Jamie wanted to make sure the land was surveyed, so the title to the land could be secure.
Mm-hmm. That's important because he doesn't trust Tryon.
He didn't trust
good
Tryon,
reason.
And Jamie is nobody's fool, so he understands that if you don't have the land surveyed and have it drawn up properly, then you have no legal claim to it. A claim which a court of law would not recognize.
But that them surveying, Ian did help with that, but we don't know that Roger had any training in the use of one of those sighting devices. I don't remember their exact name right now. But it's one of those things. I think you assume that Jamie showed him how to do it before they left the ridge.
Yeah.
Did you also notice that the only time anyone had any response to his nonverbal communication was Ian? Ian, like, you don't need to thank me. It's like he knew what he was trying to tell him. It's like, and I think that also was a bonding moment for Roger. It's like suddenly there was someone there who wasn't trying to make him talk.
Yeah.
He didn't have to say anything, and the person knew, and Ian knew what he was trying to say.
Yeah.
And twice that happened.
He's been with the people that don't really chatter like we tend to do.
Yeah. And he said, I don't always understand them. And speaking of that, I reached out to John Bell to ask for the translation of what he said. And
thank you.
And I also reached out to Sarah Lise MacArthur, who looked at it, and she said she got one word, which was peace, and she asked someone else. And so I wasn't able to get that. But I thought maybe he was burying the hatchet with Emily. When he was bearing.
Well, I mean, that's a stretch because
I think it was a metaphor that he was coming to a peace because he found a solution for his pain, but he was going to end it, and that's why I think I agree. I think it was burying a hatchet, but I saw it as a metaphor that that the peace he was seeking was for his own, and then that sort of bears it out because when Roger stops him And he says, I saw my wife's, he said, what did you see when you were about to die? And he said, I saw my wife's face. And Ian said, well, then death is not going to release me from the pain that I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And I thought, I know there's probably some people who do probably think, oh, that's just, some dramatic license or that they use. But that really does I know, Antoinette, you said your life didn't flash before my eyes. For me, it did. My future did. I mean, being in a car, my future, I thought, I yelled out for my dad. I saw my father. And then I thought, I'll never have children and I'll never go to medical school. And
things
that was
that you wanted.
And that's exactly as soon as I got recovered, I was had a laser focus on med school, and then met Anthony my first day, who was a dad. I was like, yes, I get both.
What did you say? It was a car accident, Catherine?
I was hit head on by a drunk driver, and I was in Swaziland, which is a mountainous country. Well, I was in the mountains of the country, and he hit, and they drive on the other side of the road. So I was disoriented at first because he was on my side of the road. So I got disoriented. But anyway, I pulled up it's so funny because my dad and I had just discussed head-on collisions were so common there that we sat down, he talked to me about driving there, and he said, if this happens, this is what you should do. And he said, if two cars are coming at you, drive down the middle. He said, because both of them are going to go off to the side. If you try going off to the side, one of them is going to hit you. And he said, but if someone's coming at you, he said, just pull off the side of the road. He said, he said, because then they'll just keep going on your side. So I pulled off. I was pulled off. It almost come to a stop. And my lights woke the guy up. He was drunk and he had fallen asleep. Woke him up and he turned into me. And so then we rolled down the hill. But I couldn't remember if I was on the mountain side of the hill or the wall side of the hill. So as we were rolling, I just thought, oh, that's it. I'm done. And it's funny because I called out to my dad, who was in another town. And so when I finally got to the hospital, finally got to the point where I could make a phone call, I called him up and he said, where are you? He said, I've been up for 2 hours. He goes, you woke me. I heard you call me about 2 hours ago. I got up and looked around the house and nobody was here. And I hadn't even told him what happened yet.
Wow.
Anyway, that's for Courtney.
Yeah.
She knows.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
Standouts, favorite lines, big themes.
I don't know if it's Steven. I don't know who it is, but everybody acting has been elevated these last couple of episodes. They're the same people who were here all these episodes, and it just seems like this. I think he's the one that has introduced the subtlety. Standout is directing. Standout was the scenery, the camera angles, the fact that they were showing Roger's face while Claire and Bree were talking off camera. Those type of things are so sophisticated, so artistic. The black and white movie, what I saw was Birth of a Nation, which is a movie about the Klan. So when you're talking about lynching and you're talking about then that combination just took me right into that space where Roger was.
I thought Rick was a real standout. I thought that what he got to do in terms of showing, his what he was going through, I thought he did that exceptionally well. I thought Ian was a standout. John Bell did a great job of showing that he was going through something traumatic without saying a lot. So I thought both of them did a good job in opening up themselves to us to show us what was going on internally without vocalizing it too much. So I thought acting-wise, both of them were standouts. And in general, as I said, the production, the presentation of it, it was good. It was good TV. It was artistic. They took a risk that that worked somewhat for me, but I wasn't able to pick out a big theme because I felt that I was missing the story. I felt that, as I said, I felt like I was on a train looking at pretty scenery, enjoying the company, but ended up going nowhere. Because it was expected that Roger would be traumatized. And so I expected that we were going to explore that in this episode. But I also expected that we would have got to see a little bit more of Jamie and Claire mourning for Myrtle. I also was expecting and looking forward to the development of Jamie and Bree's relationship. You know, because we're on to episode 8 now, we've got 4 more to go. And that relationship has been completely neglected since that slap in 4th season. And we just got a little glimpse in 501. And so I felt it was pretty, it was well done, it was well executed. But for me, what I watch Outlander for is the story, the relationships, the interplay between the characters. And I felt that this episode was very light on it. And yes, we delved a lot into Roger, but by halfway through, I got the message about Roger. And I didn't think we needed to continue to see his trauma over and over again. So I know what the big themes are supposed to be, but none of it resonated with me. I didn't feel it.
Yeah.
And so I was just left still feeling unsatisfied.
Okay. My standouts were Richard and John. I thought they both did an excellent job. And then locations. I thought there were some beautiful locations.
Yeah.
I love Roger and Bree's cabin. That's like my favorite set on the ridge. I loved young Ian's costume.
Oh yeah, that's true. That was a great look.
And my big theme, I felt the same as you, Antoinette. It's like silence is a theme, and it's like I know what they're supposed to be, but usually there's one that hits me that I really kind of come up with, and I didn't have that. So my big theme is don't spend a whole episode on anyone unless it's Jamie or Claire. I mean, because honestly, we didn't spend this much time on Jamie's PTSD after
Thank you.
Blackjack Randall. There was nothing. So it's kind of like, why are we spending a whole episode on Roger's PTSD? You know?
And you know, all that happened to him was that his voice was temporarily inconvenienced.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not with you on that. I think that
I think it had more to do with
someone trying to hang you, and the trauma of that would be a big deal.
But it wasn't just that it was someone; it was
his ancestor.
No.
It was his ancestor, and
actually
he was.
Yeah. Let me pull back a little bit on that, Courtney. So at the end, when he was talking to Bree, realized that his trauma wasn't just about his voice, even though they tried to make it about it first with that stupid line from Ian about your voice is your weapon. But it was about him feeling out of place in that time, and a sense of not being where he was supposed to be. And because remember, he said with the helmet, maybe this is his fate. Maybe he shouldn't have existed.
Yeah.
So I got it finally at the end, that it wasn't just about him being upset that his voice was damaged.
It was like the taxes.
Trauma for him. So I got it at the end. If no more singing, okay? No more singing.
I think we're done with the singing.
We better be.
Brianna's singing, and she has a really lovely voice.
That was surprising.
I don't care if she's the next Aretha Franklin. No more. I love it. I'm going to throw something at the key. Somebody else breaks out in the song. This is not Outlander, the freaking musical.
Okay.
Okay, Carmen, standouts and big themes.
Yes, please.
I agree, Richard, and Ian's performances were good, excellent. Jamie and Claire are always just fabulous. You can hand them, I don't care what you hand them, they're just spot on. Bree was spotty. Sophie. Did you notice that John, it looks more mature than he did when he went through the gauntlet of
he's a bit more beefy now.
Yeah, he's quite a bit.
Boy.
Yeah,
left
he's left the boy physique behind, and he looks much more manly. The big theme, I actually found a big theme in this that works for me. Let's see what you gals think of it. And I think it lays in the astrolabe that passed from John to Bree to Roger to Ian. And the astrolabe, you remember, John says, it is to help you find your place in creation or help you find your place. And I think that the big theme was finding and refinding one's place in creation. Who am I? What do I have to contribute? Am I someone of worth? Those are all sort of cosmic questions that many humans ask themselves. And the astrolabe I saw as a device to enable them to bring that to the forefront, and it got passed to these two men who were both on a parallel path in many ways. They are both traumatized. Their trauma is very different. I won't deny that. We didn't see Roger contemplating taking his life, but he certainly was metaphorically giving up on it, or it sure appeared that way. And that they were both lost. They both had been through situations that had undercut who they knew themselves to be. And I just think that it was just a simple device that was saying you can find your place anytime. You know, anytime this device will help you find your place in time and space.
Kind of like Dorothy's shoes.
Well,
it's interesting, Carmen, you should say that, because one of the things that I felt, it just felt very spiritual.
Yes,
to me, the whole episode did.
It does to me too.
Yeah, and I think spirituality is not loud.
No,
it's quiet. It's reflective, and I think that this episode captured that. I think
it's so soft that you might miss it if you're not listening.
Well,
and someone said this. The sounds. Haha. I feel like there was a reverence in this episode. I think that we needed a break between last episode and this one. I thought that had this been aired last week, it might not have played in the same way. I think just having a week to decompress before, or 2 weeks to decompress before seeing this helped. And I mean, I may be overstating this, but I just feel like there's certain episodes where if someone wanted to, they could write a dissertation on, and this is one of them.
I agree.
Wow. I'm so shallow because
it's not
I'm
about
getting none of that.
It's about resonant. It's just something resonate.
What Carmen said about finding your place, I got that in the last scene with Roger and Bree, that trying to find his place, and it wasn't just about his voice. They finally gave us that. So I agree with you, Carmen. Could have been.
Don't you also see that in Ian, though? He comes back to the ridge, and here he's presented with this gigantic, wealthy home, and he said it's big. That's all he can think to say about it. He doesn't feel that he belongs there anymore. He won't even sleep on the bed. He goes out and lays on the porch. I mean,
but I thought that was interesting, because he said, I'm not used to something about sleeping in a bed in such a grand house. And I said, but you lived in Lollybrook.
Yeah, but that was many years
a lifetime
before.
ago. That was a lifetime ago.
In his new lifetime. And I thought when he looked at the bed, he was thinking about whatever he shared with his
galas.
No. No, with
Army.
his wife that was lost to him.
Oh.
I'm kidding.
Oh,
Oh God!
And since we went there, in the path, in the people handing the astrolabe, they should have definitely had Fergus then, because I don't know what his place is. I thought it was kind of obvious in some places, and I thought it was obtuse in other places, and it just didn't grab me. It traumatized me, but other than that, I thought.
I'm just.
And when
Isn't
I went,
I think this is fascinating. I'm sorry, but I
unsympathetic.
really do. The differences of opinion.
Can I ask a
Go
question?
ahead. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Do you
sure.
guys think that this is the best episode of the series?
No,
I think it's the most artistic.
I think
That's
it's
not the
one of the
question
most
I asked.
artistic, but
Kathy,
I wouldn't say
Stop
it's the
trying
most
to
artistic.
escape. I asked a
No.
specific question.
I think that, okay, this is the thing. I don't have a best episode. I've never ever said this is the best or that's the worst. That's my favorite.
Yeah, I don't
What
either.
I can tell you, there's components of it that are my favorite. I think this was some of the best acting out of Rick Rankin. I think this was the most artistic episode. I think this was the most spiritual episode outside of the episode after Wentworth.
Oh, Faith
Yeah.
was pretty.
Yeah, Faith also.
Faith
yeah,
was
another
pretty.
one. Faith was as well.
The reason I asked is that I got into a little Twitter rant with an article. It was a review actually by somebody in the Washington Post, some highfalutin publication that was so dismissive of 507 and said the reviewer found it musky and macho and just dismissed it. And then another headline in EW said that 508 was the best episode of the series, and I just took umbrage.
I wouldn't.
I just think that I felt like it resonated with me. I don't feel like it should resonate with everyone.
Yeah.
But there was just enough of the things that I look for, that I feel that I mean, when I watched this episode, my first thing was I started writing poetry. I don't normally write a lot. I write when I feel emotionally, it's cathartic for me.
Yeah.
Writing, poetry is cathartic, and I needed that. And I wrote a poem. And rarely am I inspired to do stuff like that. I start writing, but this episode did that for me.
Wow, that's interesting. I mean, I just find it so fascinating that there's so many disparate views about the episode. Some people are in raptures over it, and some people hate everything about it.
I like the slower paced episodes. Some people don't. I tend to like the ones that are slower paced. I like the fact that Bear, oh my gosh, the music. I forgot to mention that. He brought in, what sounded like talking drums, but I figured, okay, it's probably not. So they're more likely the Indian, tabla drums, and then the flutes and it was just listening to the music and watching it. It was like he wasn't saying anything, so the music was doing all the talking. Those type of things just kind of, I feel them. They speak to me.
Did you have any favorite lines that you want to put out there?
Man, there's about 7 of them.
Go ahead.
But the one that I liked very much was Ian's at the table when he said, "You all ken the beginning, and we're eating the ending for supper."
Yeah, that was good. I thought the writing was good for this episode. I have to say. I just didn't like. That's what I was trying to figure out. I didn't like the contents. I didn't like what the writing was good. I don't know. It's hard to explain.
It's hard to explain.
Yeah. Wherever you thought you were, we're both still here. Young Ian says to Roger, which was very reassuring to him, I thought.
Yeah. Yep. Well, my favorite line was Jocasta to Jamie. If we would be, how careful we would be if we can't, that this goodbye could be the last.
I'd like to say something personal about Jocasta's comment that how careful we'd be if we can't. My father passed away when I was 32. And the last thing that I said to him was, we were talking about some inane thing of no importance. And that night he dropped dead in when he was taking a woodworking class at the nearby high school. And I did never get a chance to say goodbye. And that just really, it's been many years ago. But she's absolutely right. You just don't ever have an idea what fate has in store. And for that reason, I think it behooves one to try to keep as good, loving relationships with people as you are able to do. I'm much better at it my age now than I was when I was younger. So I'm encouraged by that, that I've learned something over the years. But I thought that was a lovely comment. You're alive, you're whole, all is well. That sounds like something that Jamie would say. And he did say it in the book. That's right out of the book. But it is so him as a leader, as Laird, for him to be able to say something like that, to be of comfort to a person. He's been through a lot. He's got a pretty good perspective.
Well, and also he knows from being with Ian Sr. and all his battles, like that is what Roger would want to know, Yeah.
But it's interesting, Carmen, you should mention that, especially in the time we're in now. I've just, with this COVID, I can't even count the number of people I know who've lost family members, having so many friends who are physicians. But then also just, and only so many people in the hot spots in Detroit and New York. And that's just the thing over and over and over again. If I had known the last time I saw someone, I would have hugged them a little tighter. And even in my family, I think one of the reasons why even our family isn't grieving as much as you'd expect with my father having passed away is because we just made it under the wire. That was the last weekend for travel.
I've thought about that.
All of us have just said, I'm just so grateful that we were able to all be together, because as soon as, all hell broke loose right after that weekend.
Yep.
You were lucky.
Yeah,
very.
That was a blessing.
Because I honestly, I don't. I know, I would have just. It would be a knife in my gut if I had lost my father without my being able to be there.
Yeah, I can vouch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why that line resonated with me too.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say the scene with Bree and Claire in the kitchen having tea, and she says, "No matter how lost he is, you just have to have faith that you find him."
I didn't like that line.
You didn't,
because it was so passive from Claire. Just have faith, you find him. This is the Claire that when the Redcoats took Jamie, went on a mission to find him. She wasn't just sitting back and hoping that Faith she went after him. And I just felt that was a bit out of character for Claire. But
That's a good point. I
thought that she would have said, Bree, you have to go. And then Bree went and confronted Roger and tried to go find him.
Yeah.
By trying to shock him out of his trauma by relating to her trauma. You have to fight first. That felt more like Claire.
Yeah, I agree.
That was a nice line.
Yeah.
It didn't feel authentic to me.
Oh,
Claire went off in our favorite episode of season 1, The Search.
It occurred to me when we saw Colin McFarlane as Ulysses really looking at Maria Doyle Kennedy, I thought, ooh, maybe they are going to do that storyline now that Murtaugh's gone.
Do you
Could be.
Yes. Did you see him? Did you that the camera work in that scene was phenomenal?
Oh my gosh.
The tight shot and then the wide shot with Ulysses just circling and watching them. He was blurred, it was soft, and saying, okay, I see you, Ulysses.
Yeah, and,
I actually,
and then how he focused on her so much as they went to the carriage for their 200-mile journey back down the cliffs. But
I know.
But I did think like, oh, maybe they are going to do that story.
Someone took a picture of that still. I have never been inspired to paint anything from Outlander, but I think I will paint that. It was just
thing. Which
we were waiting. I want to see that.
It was a side image of Ulysses with his coat, that mustard coat, and his head was up. His face was in half shadow. There was a light the angle of the light coming in, and then his hat. But he was kind of looking up. It was just such a regal. He looked like, you know what he looked like? It was reminiscent of paintings you see of George Washington crossing the Delaware. I saw that and I thought, you know what? I think, I said that's a painting.
You'll show us on here when you're done.
I will.
I found another quote that I thought was good, other than Ohusala, which I thought was really cool.
I liked that scene.
My blood. When Jocasta says, we weren't a husband and wife, and Jamie said, neither were we father and son. But that doesn't make the pain any less or easier to bear. And I thought that was a very tender thing, a very, very lovely sentiment that he expressed there.
Well, and that's why, I do give the writer props, because they were in character, like all the things that would kind of, how when an episode is poorly written, and this one wasn't poorly written, that wasn't the issue.
Did you see the look on Sam's face in that scene when he walked up to Jocasta, that loving look in his eyes?
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Just such a I
I died and gone to heaven.
That whole scene.
God, he was just gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Yes,
he really was.
And the other scene I really liked was Jamie and Claire in bed with Adso, where she tells him
that was sweet,
that he's gonna take his life. Just a short, but they were right in character, and it was just a nice visit to them in an episode of Roger.
That's the only thing that didn't ring true. You're a physician. You think somebody's taken something that they can use to commit suicide, and you just casually mention it hours later. I mean, why? My thought would have been, go after them now.
I found another quote that I thought was apropos to the discussion, and I know we're out.
Tell us, and then we'll have breakfast.
When Ian says to Roger, after he's thrown the airplane, and he said, well, it looks like a bird, but it doesn't sing. He says, the birds always seem to go together. Wish it was the same for us as well. And that was telling me that he really felt out of place.
Yeah.
When he looked at this huge mansion at a bed, he hadn't been, yes, he was raised in that kind of setting, but he had been gone for close to 2 years.
And not only that, if you think about it, he was raised with the Murrays. Then he kind of went off with Jamie, and he was part of that with Jamie and Claire, which ties in the betrayal thing of them keeping secrets. And then he went to the Mohawks.
Then he was captured by the pirates, so he was gone from them for quite a few months then, before they rescued him.
And Gillis was bathing in the blood and all sorts.
But he established connection with the Mohawks, so he doesn't know who his flock is.
Right. I think he's displaced. That's why I said the astrolabe to me is a symbol of them, these lost men who are trying to find their place in the universe.
And so is that why Lord John handed it to Free?
Well, I think they had to have a way to get it to those two men.
Well, why doesn't Jamie do it? Anyway, I'm sorry.
I mean, why doesn't he give it to Jamie?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, because I think that Lord John wanted to look at Bree's neck.
All right. On that note, it is so late. I have not eaten dinner yet.
I know, neither have I.
Bye, you ladies. I love you.
Love you. Mm-hmm.
All
Very
right.
flirtatious. Very
I
flirtatious.
love you, and I have to go.
Okay,
I know.
Bye,
I have to
bye,
go too. Bye. 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 Bye.
Well, stop talking, you lot. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Love you guys.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye. Don't go drink.
Of course I will. What you talking about?
Bye.
Courtney, you know me. Bye.